Welcome to Power Up with Cathy Orquiola. In each episode, my guests and I provide insights by exploring how to be excellent and build effective leadership. Through listening and watching the show, I hope you're inspired to power up your leadership style. It's time to choose your power and introduce my guest, Tyler Kautz, District Manager of our PCL Seattle office. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Cathy.
And Tyler, before I read your bio, I just want to say thank you for your service.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
A little info on Tyler. He began his career with PCL in 2005 as an intern. And then in 2006, after serving a one-year tour in Iraq, he joined PCL full-time in Seattle. He's worked on notable projects throughout Seattle, including projects like the Moreno Senior Living Facility, as well as the $100 million SLAM project, which stands for the Statewide Library, Archive, and Museum Project in Juneau, Alaska. Tyler graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree, first in his class from UW in construction management. So thank you for joining us, Tyler.
Yeah, Cathy, thankful and grateful to be here, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
So tell me, Tyler, let's talk about how the military leadership style really interrelates with that corporate leadership style. So can you tell me, how did your military experience shape your understanding of leadership in the context of the team dynamics?
Yeah, so Cathy, I think what I would say, teamwork is really drilled into you from day one in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has an incredible esprit de corps, is oftentimes referred to, which is a kind of a pride in the heritage of all the Marines that have come before you, and really bringing each other up and the sacrifices that everyone has made for one another. So starting out at boot camp, you learn the importance of bringing everyone up around you that may be struggling, because if you don't, the entire unit will suffer the same consequences. In training, and then also later on in the more important in the field is where that would really be catastrophic. So when you have that culture of bringing everyone up, it's amazing to see what people can achieve long term, and people you didn't think could go as far as they can when the whole team is bringing them up. So the Marine Corps really embodies the saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together.
Wow. That is really impressive. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yep.
How powerful. So can you share a memorable experience that illustrates that exact principle of the teamwork?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories that would come to mind from, long in the Marine Corps, you call them humps or hikes, carrying your gear into certain areas. People are struggling, you're helping them out, or personal sacrifices, people putting their own lives in the line of fire. However, as it relates to the broader mission, I'll share just a kind of a basic example that's similar to the industry we're both in now, the construction industry. One of my specialties, I was trained in external helicopter lifts, and you had to have 100% trust in everyone around you that they understood their role and could execute that flawlessly, from the pilots and crew chiefs that are keeping the helo on station, the rigger that's slinging up the load so it didn't shift mid-flight and potentially cause a crash. You had to have a team grounding out the helicopter because there's so much static electricity that's created that it could electrocute the Marines on the ground. For certain helos, the Osprey comes to mind. You'd have Marines that are literally holding you up for microbursts of up to 200 mile per hour gusts of wind, so you didn't get pushed underneath the exhaust and get 30-degree burns. So there's just so many roles, and every single one of them is equally important. And if you have a single failure point in anybody not performing their role, the entire operation could be fatal. So everyone instilling that muscle memory and how important it is to fulfill your role and count on one another, that they're going to do their job, and really creating that extreme ownership of your role, so that that you're protecting the Marines around you. And it's much the same on our job sites. For example, a tower crane pick, a critical pick with the crane that's could have some crucial impacts too to life and property. So
I heard so many powerful themes in that, Tyler. Extreme ownership and just the reality that you're talking about life and death. It's just incredibly powerful. Thank you for sharing. So, what were some of the key challenges that you faced when transitioning from the military into the corporate world?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's there's a lot of skills that are transferable, but there's also some things that you need to tweak, approach. Largely, the military, you have to be consistent across the masses. You transfer units, pretty frequently, and you have to have instant reliance on communication and procedures so that, if you go to one unit to the other, you can rely on each other and have the same approach. Smaller specialized units are different, but generally speaking, the military is pretty standard. In the corporate world, the challenges and teams operate very differently. So while the military relies on consistency, and that's life or death, in the corporate world, you have to have a lot more flexibility in your communication approach. For example, and I had some great mentors that helped me kind of realize the importance of this. If I was to expect everyone on a team to adapt to my communication style, I may be only getting, on average, say 75% effectiveness out of the team. It might be consistent, but the effectiveness of everyone around me might not be anywhere close to their optimal performance. And so if I adjust my style to what works best for each individual, I may be able to get, 95, 100% of effectiveness out of the team on average. So you as a team, you're a lot more effective when you're adjusting styles to what works best for those in your team.
I couldn't agree more. We were actually discussing that this morning, how important it is to have varied communication styles because people receive and digest information differently. So it's critical to be able to reach the masses and be able to be flexible in your communication style so that you are effective in your leadership.
Yep.
Another thing I really heard you talk about is that consistency, right? Like the reality is I've got the pleasure of seeing multiple PCL districts, and you absolutely know that you're walking into the PCL organization as you go into every district, and each district has its own little tweak of its own identity. And so you pegged it like that each place has to have its own identity, but it has to have that consistency so that you can transfer amongst districts and be successful on day one. There's no learning curve. I love that. So can you share some military leadership principles or strategies that you've found particularly effective in leading teams at PCL?
Yeah, so there's a few that come to mind, and much like PCL, the military has a bunch of acronyms. So the acronyms for all these, a number of different principles, but maybe some that jump out at me. Trust is one. If people don't think you're looking out for the best interests of them and the team, they're not going to follow, and they're not going to rally around kind of the vision that's been set and where the direction you're going. Reliability, as a leader, people need to trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do and follow through. So kind of the saying, the word needs to be, my word is my bond. And if I say I'm going to do something, if I commit to it, people need to have trust that I'll follow through with that. And, lastly, I'll say decisiveness is pretty important, both in the military, I think, as well as in the corporate world. As leaders, you're in that position to sometimes make uncomfortable or tough decisions, and everyone's looking at you to do what's best for the overall, mission. I'll say the term mission is interchangeable in the corporate world with things like vision and business plan and, things like that. But if your team does not see that you're being decisive in your communication and making, challenging decisions for the betterment of the team and the business, over time, your effectiveness to lead will be diminished. So I'll say trust, reliability, and decisiveness are three in particular that I think are transferable from the military to the corporate world.
I can tell you, Tyler, from having the pleasure of working with you over the last 2 years, those absolutely read through in how you interact with me. I told the team before we were getting started today that if it gets to be 10:01 and Tyler's not on yet, we have a problem because Tyler's never late. He does what he says. He meets his commitments. So that trust, that reliability, like I know that I can take it to the bank that Tyler's going to do what he says. And I very much appreciate that about you. You really are salt of the earth. And I just want to thank you again for your military service and all that you do for PCL.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, Cathy. It means a lot. And you exemplify a lot of these same traits, and the support that our group gets from you, and the things I've been able to pick up from you, it's pretty incredible, and grateful for that. So.
All right, Tyler. So I want to leave you with one final question that I ask all of my guests. What is your superpower?
That's an interesting question here. Let me just ponder that a little bit. I'll say perspective, I think, is one that jumps out at me. What having some experience that I have from the military, it puts into perspective situations you're in, and it helps you kind of slow down and think through a situation to really get at a clear analysis of the situation and what are viable options to move forward with. The military, just by the nature of it, puts you in some pretty stressful situations where you're dealing with serious loss of life potential. So in the corporate world, there's a lot of important decisions that you have to make, but perspective in looking at it, that when you've gone through some of the things that you see in the military, it helps you kind of slow down and think through a situation and realize that at the end of the day, there's not bullets flying, there's not mortars coming through the air at you, and it gives you a little bit more time to work through a situation and that perspective to make the right decision. I'll share a funny story. Tony Sturgis, an operations manager for PCL, I've heard him tell this to other people in the past. He asked me one time, what's the worst place that you've slept in? We were talking about, I think the context was people were talking about job sites they've been on or trips they've been on and things like that. And I caught him off guard when I said, I slept for 7 months in a bombed out terrorist training camp in Fallujah. And, that kind of caused him to pause for a second there. And I think that really talks about the perspective when you've been in situations like that. At the end of the day, life gets a little bit easier.
That the ability to remain calm, not be reactive, take perspective before you take your next step. Just take a moment, take a breath, and then step out in your purpose and in your power. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your insights. I think that everybody can learn from some of your experiences. So thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, Cathy, I appreciate you having me on the podcast. And all you're doing to recognize veterans, both in PCL and outside of PCL. So,
absolutely, they're an incredible part of our society. You're an incredible part of our society. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining. I hope that all of you leave here inspired today to power up and lead.